For more context, Christian Leuprecht is standing by. He's a military analyst, senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute and the Center for North American Prosperity and Security. Good to see you, Christian, on this Monday. Your take on this visit by Mark Carney to Ukraine, Poland, and eventually to Germany.
Well, look, our big announceable on this visit was that we signed a customs agreement with Ukraine. And we re-announced drones that we had already announced on the occasion of the G7. This is why Canada is not being taken seriously. We may make these types of commitments. These are places that, spending commitments that we might get to. We might grow the Canadian Armed Forces. I do think the Prime Minister has a serious commitment, but it's telling that the Prime Minister, of course, is traveling alone. There's no other European leaders there with him in Ukraine. He was not there at the White House with 7 other European leaders backing Zelensky. It suggests that we have a very large lag to make up for to show that indeed Canada is a country that should have a voice at the table.
What more would you like to see?
A recommitment to the foreign policy instruments in this country. And the way I always sum this up is we've been fighting against the terrain. We should be able to shape the terrain. We shaped the terrain significantly in the aftermath of the Second World War and into the 1950s and 60s, realizing that ultimately we needed to assert our interests. In this very volatile world, it seems to me that we're constantly reacting. And the reason that we're reacting is that we have become significant on the radar of our allies for what we're not doing or not able to do. And so I always like to term the Prime Minister's commitment, the Prime Minister's investment is actually to make sure that Canada is significant by its insignificance, that we can actually do things because we might not be conspicuous by our presence, but we are very conspicuous by our absence.
And this kind of a trip, is that part of trying to change the narrative, Christian, about Canada by Carney going in person to these places, trying to shore up some of these relationships, perhaps in a way we did not see under the previous Prime Minister?
Well, I think the narrative is largely for domestic consumption at home to see what the wonderful things are that Canada is doing. I think what our allies want to see is actually real commitments, real engagement, real spending, real capabilities by Canada. And, we can talk about possibly committing troops to some security guarantees in Ukraine, but these are zero-sum games because these troops are currently committed elsewhere. And we've had an organization that has been undercapitalized, underfunded with atrophying capabilities and atrophying staffing. So the Prime Minister is right. He's making a generational investment in the organization, but it will take quite some time to turn this organization around where it can perform the sort of political expectations that Canada has for its armed forces. It just doesn't have the resources and capabilities within those armed forces to come through. And I think it'll be telling how his meeting with Chancellor Merz goes in Germany. But of course, Merz has been to the White House repeatedly, has never felt it necessary to make a stop in Canada. That alone is telling, and he's making the Canadian Prime Minister show up in Berlin. We'll see whether the Chancellor, who's really the kingmaker in terms of European foreign policy, whether the Prime Minister is able to convince him that Canada really does matter, and that'll require a significant U-turn also on policies such as energy resilience.
Military analyst Christian Leuprecht with his take. Good to see you as always, Christian. Thanks for this.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tom.